Hi, welcome to my video on the review of Polynomials 2. This is the first half of the review of this Polynomials 2. There's also a second half. The reason I divided up the two parts because it would have been a video. One video would have been too long. And notice it's a review, so you can treat it as a quiz. And you can see that I have a total here of 30. When you get your final score, add it up, put it over 30, divide 30 into the numerator, get a decimal, then move your decimal 2 places to the right to get a percent. Notice I have one of 6 pages is the first page. So here we go. Treat it as a quiz. So pause the video and work all of these out. When you get them done, then record if you have them right or wrong, and then add it up. So you do this for each page, and when you're finished, what you do is total the numbers on the bottom, and then put it over the 30 that I showed you at the beginning. So here we go. Simplify in descending order. Descending order, so let's see, we're adding, so we could remove the addition sign. When we are adding, we do not change any of these inside, any of these terms, because you're adding. We group the like terms, we put the squares together, we put the x's together, and we put the constants together. So x squared, x, constants are on the right because they're understood to be x to the 0. Add those up. That's a 1. 3 plus 1 is 4x squared minus 9x plus 1. Notice descending order and fully simplified. Notice that's a -7 and a -2 is a -9. Number 2, simplify in descending order. Again, we have a plus sign, so I'm going to write them all down, but at this step, because you're adding, this step would be, and a test would be, I won't say not wasting time, but if you know what you're doing, I would have left this step out, and because I'm adding, I would have wrote down my x cubed, then I would have picked up the other x cubed, which is that one, and then I would have picked up my x squareds, which is right here, and then I would have picked up my x's, and then I would have picked up my constants. So 3, 6, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have them all. So if you write them all down and take the brackets away, then you're looking for descending order. So the cubes go first, then the squares, then the x's, and then the constant. Since I have them in descending order, 4 and 2 makes 6. 6 and 1, that's a 1 there, so 6 and 1 makes 7, so 7x squared. -3, -1 is -4x, and 1 plus 4 is 5. Again, when you add the numbers and keep the term. You keep the literal coefficient, adding like terms. The terms have to be the same literal coefficient. Find a parameter as a polynomial in descending order. So in descending order, let's write down the first one, 9x minus 2, add on 7x plus 1, add on 5x plus 6. So I went around and I picked up this one, then this one, and this one. I have them all written down, so 9x plus 7x plus 5x is the order and is in descending, so the constants always go at the right side. X's come first. Notice when I move these, I didn't change the signs. So 9, 16, 21x, and -2, that's a 7. Take away 2 is plus 5. That's the way I add the pluses and minuses, and then I subtract them. There it is, simplified. 4, add. So we're going to add these. So adding these, we don't change the sign. So -4, -3 is -7. Again, you could do your plus negatives if you want. 6 subtract 2 is 4. When we're adding, we just add up what we see. And notice the like terms are put together, so that's an x squared. 8 subtract 10 is -2. So there it is, fully simplified. Notice the like terms are placed underneath each other. This is the vertical method. Number 5, what's the opposite? Opposite means change the signs. So 2, negative 2. Negative 7, plus 7. Plus 6, minus 6. So the opposite is you change the signs of all the terms. So when you add all these up, that's a 0, that's a 0, and that's a 0. So that's the opposite of that. Because opposites, when you add, give you 0. Simplify in descending order. Notice we have an 8x squared plus minus x, 9x minus 2. And so when we subtract, we add on the opposite of these. Subtraction is adding on the opposite. That's a minus, so that becomes a plus. That's a plus, becomes a minus. That's a minus, becomes a plus. So there's the opposites. Now we're going to go in descending order. So the squares go first. Okay. The x's go next. So negative 9x minus 3. And negative 2 plus 6. Descending order, 8 plus 1, that's a 1. That's a 9, x squared. Negative 9, negative 3 is negative 12. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4. So there it is. How many did you get right? Put your total at the bottom of the page. Next page. Again, pause the video on this page and work your answers out and see how many you're going to get right. And notice we want to simplify in descending order. So the first one, because we're subtracting, we'll add on the opposites. So that's a plus 2x squared, and that's a negative 7x. Because we're subtracting, we'll add on the opposite. So negative is a positive, and a negative is a positive. So both of these are subtractions, so we had to change both of these two and these two. Group your like terms. Descending order, the x squared goes first. Then we put the x's next. So we got a negative 3x, negative 7x, plus 4x. All the x's, x squareds are done, the x's are done. So the constants are on the right. Constant, remember, a constant has an x to the 0. So that's why the constant is on the right, because it's the last term. And 2x squared is nothing added to it, and we got a negative 3, negative 7, negative 10 plus 4 is negative 6, or subtract 6. 8 plus 6 is 14, and we have descending order. Now we're going to subtract these. So there's the subtraction sign, because now when we subtract, we add on the opposite. So that negative becomes a positive. That positive becomes a negative. That negative becomes a positive. And that positive becomes a negative. So everything inside of the circles is what I'm now looking at. So you ignore the other sign. And descending order, so I have a, let's see, that's a negative. I change it to a positive. So let's see, negative, positive, positive, negative, negative, positive, and that was a positive, so we made a negative. So I had a little error here, so I'm checking again. So negative 2 plus 5 is a plus 3. Negative 4, negative 9 is negative 13. 3, and that's a 1 understood, so 3 plus 1 is 4. And we got an x cubed, so 6 subtract 2 is 4. So notice what's inside the circles is the sign change because we're subtracting. That's the vertical method. Number 9, simplify each. We're multiplying. That's first, that would be 2x squared times 5x is 10x cubed. When you multiply, you add your exponents. Then it's 2x squared times negative 3, negative 6x squared. And we got a negative 3x times 6x squared gives me negative 18x cubed. Again, that's a 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. So when we multiply exponentials with the same basis, we add the exponents. And that's a positive 9x squared, because that's a 1 and a 1. Then we multiply again, and we get a positive 12x. So notice the monomial on the outside is distributed through each of these on the inside. So notice I'm doing the arrows. So here we go. Multiply this one times this. That gives me 8x 5y3. 2 plus 3 is 5. And that's a 1 plus 2 is 3. And we're going to multiply again. Draw the arrow. So I'm multiplying this one by this one. So that's a positive. 4 5s is 20. X squared times x squared is x4 because we add. And that's a 1, and that's a 1, so that's y squared. It's fully simplified. 10. If a square has a side of 5x plus 3, then its parameter is. So a square has 4 sides, and they're all the same. So if you put p equals 4s, which is the formula for the perimeter of a square, you put your 4 down, and the side is 5x plus 3. Then you multiply 4 by 5x, give you 20x, and 4 by 3 gives you 12. So that's the polynomial that it represents the parameter. Or if you want, you could have did 5x plus 3, add on 5x plus 3, add on 5x plus 3, add on 5x plus 3. But look, off the work, it's easier to go this way. But your choice. If you want to go that way and add all the x's up, you still get 20x plus 12. Number 11, simplify in descending order. Now we have to obey PEMDAS because we got different operations going on. So this is fully simplified in here because they're on like terms. We can't add these because they're on like terms. We don't have any powers or exponents on top of the brackets, so we have to multiply these two, these, and these first because the order of operations, we got to multiply and divide from left to right. So let's multiply these two. 3 times 2x, 6x. 3 times 5, 15. Plus 4 times x, plus 4x. And plus 4 times negative 6 is 24. So we have that done. Now we have to add or subtract. So from left to right, we group our like terms because it's descending order. Constants go on the end. And 6 and 4 makes 10, 10x. And that's 15 minus 24 is negative 9 or plus a negative 9. B, again, we have to do PEMDAS, PEMDAS. This, we can't do any with these because they're on like terms. We can't add or subtract. And the same thing in here, we can't add or subtract. And there's no exponents, done. Now, little trick here. If you notice, let's go right back up to the top. Up here, when I first did this, starting this unit, I said we added on the opposite. Well, that's great. We're subtract, we add on the opposite. But a little trick, after I learned how to do the distributive property by going 2x squared times these two, if you put a 1 right here, understood, that's a minus 1. You're subtracting. So if you put a 1 here, then you're treating it as a multiplication and a multiplication. You could leave the 1 out and add on the opposite. Your choice. But anyway, 7x times x squared is 7x cubed. 7x times 2x is 14x squared. And 7x times negative 3 is negative 21x. Now if you put a 1 there, then there's a negative 1 times these 3, which makes it same as adding on the opposite. Plus 6x squared plus 4x minus 1. And group your like terms. We have a cubes first. We have the squares next. We have the x's going next, descending order. And then the constant is always on the right. Add, so that stays the same. 14 and 6 is 20, x squared. 21 and minus 21 and 4 is a negative 17x minus 1. Total up the number you have right, place that at the bottom. Let's continue. Don't forget to pause the video, work all these out to see how many you're going to get right, and then put your total on the bottom. Simplify in descending order. So PEMDAS, P-E-M-D-A-S. And I can't add in here because they're on like. I can't add here, they're on like. I have no exponents on the top of the brackets. So I have to do multiplication division. So the 9x squared is not touched. I leave that alone. So I'll multiply x by these two. So that's a 5x squared, x times 1. Negative 1 is negative x. Negative 2 times these two is plus 6x minus 4. Now you can go plus or negative if you want, your choice, like plus minus 2. So that's a negative times a negative, still a positive. So that negative 2 here is treated as a multiplication. So you go plus negative or just keep it as a minus. And we group like terms are already squares. X is perfect. Add, you get a 14x squared. And negative 1, understood. Negative 1 plus 6 is a 5x with a minus 4. So we have a simplified. PEMDAS again, PEMDAS, the order of operations. And we cannot do anything inside here because they're unlike. These are unlike. These are okay. No powers, nope. So we have to multiply these, and we have to multiply these. And again, if we want to put a subtraction, putting a 1 right here, now I can treat that as a multiplication. So I will do all the multiplication left to right. So 4 times 3 is 12. So let's put that right there. So now I got 4 times 3 is 12. Then I take the 4 times 3x is 12x. Then I take the 12x and multiply by 2x. So that's a negative 24x squared. So you multiply these two first to get 12x. Then it's 12x times this one. You don't multiply 4 by 3x and 4 by 2x squared. You multiply these two first, then you do your third multiplication after. Be careful. Negative 1 times x, negative x. Negative 1 times 9, positive 9. Plus 7 times negative x squared, negative 7x squared. And plus 7 times 3 is 21. Descending order. I have squares and x's and constants, so squares go first. X's go next. And constants go next. And notice I only have one x. So negative 24, negative 7 is a negative 31 x squared. And x, negative x stays the same. And 9 times, add on 21 is 30. So there it is, fully simplified. 13, find a product. Product means multiply. Product, so it's f plus h bracket t plus r. So this is what we call multiplying here will be by FOIL. F-O-I-L. First is F-T. Second is the outside is F. You gotta be careful. F-R. Inside, H times T. And last is H times R. So just saying you're doing your FOIL on this. Number 14, simplifying descending order. So again, we're doing a binomial times a binomial, and we're going to use the FOIL method. First, x times x, x squared. Outside, x times plus 4. Inside, 2 times x. And last is 2 times 4 is 8. Add up the like terms. So 4x and 2x is 6x. Descending order, perfect. And we have, again, a binomial times a binomial. First, x squared. Outside, negative 3x. Inside, plus 3x. Negative 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And we add up our like terms. They give me 0, so I have x squared minus 9. And again, I have a binomial times a binomial, so I'll use FOIL. First, oops, go on over, I get a 6x squared. First, outside, 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. Inside, negative 5 times 3x is negative 15x. And last is negative 5 times negative 2 is 15. Like terms is the x's, so it's negative 19x. So I'm multiplying these, a binomial times a binomial, use FOIL. FOIL is F-O-I-L. That's the first terms multiplied together. O is outside, that's these. And I is inside, that's these two. And last is these two. First, outside, inside, last. Remember, we did a lot of practice in the videos before this. Hopefully you know what you're doing. 15, simplify. And again, I have a binomial times a binomial. So first is 20x squared. Last, negative 8xy. Inside, 3y times 5x is a positive 15. So positive 15yx is the same as a positive 15xy. xy and yx, x times y is the same as y times x. So because I got an xy here, I can go with an xy here. And last is negative 6y squared. And add up the like terms. 20x squared, there's nothing, no more like it. And that's a negative 8, and a 15 is a plus 7. And a minus 6y. Remember, xy is the same as yx, so I can switch them around when I'm multiplying. And b, let's FOIL again, a binomial times a binomial. So first, so that's an a to the 5, that's a 1b cubed. So outside of these two, get it careful now. So a squared times a squared is a4, and b to the 1 times b squared is b cubed. Now we do the inside. First, outside, inside. So ab times a squared b is a positive a4b3. That's a 1 and a 1, I put it there. So when you multiply these two, you get 1 plus 3 is 4, and 1 plus 2 is 3. And we multiply the last. The last is these two. So I'm multiplying ab by a squared b, and that gives me a cubed b cubed, because 1 plus 2 is 3, and 1 plus 2 is 3. Do I have any like terms? a5b, I don't have any a5, so I got to write that one down. Do I have any a4b cubes? There's an a4b cubed, so that's a 1 and a 1, so 1 plus 1 gives me 2 of them. So when you add, notice when you add the like terms, you keep the literal coefficient, which means keep the variables, and add up the numbers in front. And a cubed b, there's no more like it, so total up your scores, see how much you get on the bottom. Hopefully everything is going well. If you reviewed my videos, it's going well. 5 of 6 page. Pause the video, work all these out, and see how many you're going to get right, but your total on the bottom. 16, find the area of each polynomial in descending order. Well, the area of a triangle is a half the base times the height. So the half of the base, let's make this wider. The base is 4x plus 5, and the height is 6x. So I can multiply these, but I can multiply, when I'm multiplying, remember you can multiply the half by the 6x, and that'll give you a 3x. And then you leave the 4x plus 5. Or you can go a half of, well, that's a 6 there. That's a 6. That's a 6. There it is. So I can do this. I got several choices. But before I do this one up here, let's finish off this one. I said I'd do a half of 6 because that's a 3x. So I did a half times this. That gave me 3x. Then I multiply 3x by these two. That gives me, a 12x squared plus 18x. Because that's a monomial, and that's a monomial, I'll get rid of these two first. Because this is 3 multiplications, I can multiply any 2 of these first. So if I wanted to, I could have taken a half of this one. So a half of 4 is 2x, a half of 6 is 3. Then I multiply by 6x. So 2x times 6x is 12x squared. 3 times 6x is 18x. And I still get the same answer. Or if I wanted to, I could have multiplied these two first. And that will give me 24x squared. And 6 times 6x is 36x. Then I could have taken half of that binomial. Half of 24 is 12. Half of 36 is 18. So there's many ways to multiply, but the easiest is to take a half of the 6x to get 3x and then multiply. But your choice. To get the area of this polynomial, a rectangle is the length times the width. So the length is 2x plus 5, and the width is x plus 3. And the area would be first, outside, inside, last. So remember, we're multiplying each of these terms. First, outside, inside, last. and add up the like terms. No more x squared, so that won't change. And 6x and 5x is 11x. So that's the polynomial that represents the area of that rectangle in simplified form and in descending order. 17. Express a plus b squared as a trinomial. So a plus b times a plus b, which is first outside. Inside is BA, but I'll make it an AB because AB and BA are the same when you multiply. And B times B is B squared. So that's writing it out twice. And you get A squared plus 2AB. Notice 1 plus 1 is 2. Now, let's get the square. So that's, you get that one done. The square of this, so that's an x plus 6 squared, which is x plus 6 times x plus 6. So the square of this is, put it to the 2, multiplied by itself. First, outside, inside, last, and add up the like terms, 12x. So there, when we square that, we multiply by itself and use FOIL. But we also know that squaring a binomial, which is up here, has this pattern. So if you square a plus b squared, you get an a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So that means if I use this pattern, that means that's the a, and if I add on the negative 4, the b, so a is 3x, and the b is negative 4. So if you fill in a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, that's the pattern when you square a binomial. So if you do that, and you say a is 3x, so that's 3x squared. A is 3x. B, because I subtracting, to subtract, you add on negative 4. So b is negative 4. So you notice, b is negative 4. So in the place of a, I put 3x in bracket. A is 3x in bracket. B is negative 4 in brackets, and b is negative 4. And you go through, and you 3x squared is 3x times 3x is 9x squared. And that's a negative. 6 times 4 is 24x. When you multiply 3 of these together, you multiply these two to get 6x, then multiply by negative 4. And when you square, negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. So if you did FOIL on this, by writing it down twice, you could still get the same answer. But this is the pattern for when you square a binomial. A squared plus 2a, a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Number 20. Let's continue. Which trinomial is a perfect square? Well, if you remember, a perfect square has a square, perfect square at the beginning, perfect square at the end, ends in a plus sign, and the middle term is the square root of each of these doubled. So is this a perfect square? Yes. Is this a perfect square? Yes. Does it end in a plus? No. So that's not. This one, and the square root of that is 3x. The square root of that is 1. Ends in a plus, okay. But if you multiply these two, you get 6x doubled. Nope, that's because of that. That's not a perfect square. And the square root of 3x, that's 3. Square root of 3, that's root 3. So this is not right because that's not a perfect square. They're coming from an integer squared. So that's not. No. So it must be right here. Let's see. Square root of 4x is 2x. Square root of 9, 3. Has to end in a plus. Done. And the first term and the last term has to be pluses. So we got to be careful. So if that's a plus, we're okay. And what's the product of these two? 6x. If you double them, you get 12x. So it ends in a plus. You can do this. That's a perfect square. That's a perfect square. Do the square root of these two and multiply them and double it because it's a 2ab. Notice? So this is D is the perfect square trinomial. Again, as a pattern, practice it, get used to it. Number 20, let's multiply these. A binomial times a binomial. First, 4x squared. Outside, negative 10x, inside 10x, and last negative 25. So you notice that minus 10x plus 10x gives you 0. So that's a 4x squared minus 25. Notice they're the same two terms separated by plus and minus. That tells. If they're the same term separated by plus and minus, then you only got to multiply these two to get 4x squared, multiply these two to get negative 25, because the outside is negative, the inside is positive. They're the same terms and they cancel. Knowing that, number 22, which binomial is the difference of two squares? Notice they call this one the difference of two squares, because that's a 2x squared minus a 5 squared. These are perfect squares, so they can be written as some term squared. And there's the minus, the difference of two squares. Which binomial is the difference of two squares? This is not the difference. That's the sum. So that's not right. This is the difference, all right. Difference is subtract, but that's not a perfect square. So that's not good. That one's not good. See, this got to be a y squared or a 4 or a 6 power. This looks like the difference. So what's the square root? So that's a 5x, and that's a 4. But if I square 5x, I get 25x squared. If I square 2, I get... So they're perfect squares, and they're the difference. So that looks like that's the difference of two squares. And this is a cube. A cube is not a square. You either got to have x squared, x4, x6. You got to have an even powers on the squares. 16 is a 4. It's a difference, all right, but that's a cube, so that's not right. So C is the right answer. So total up, how many did you get right? Now add all your numbers on each page up. Take every number on the bottom, and when you got them done, all total up, come back to the first page and put your number over whatever you have right over 30. Hopefully it's 30 out of 30, you did perfect. But if you didn't, go back and look at some of the videos, review again, find questions in your book similar, and review again. Make sure because this, what you're doing now, this Algebra 1, is the foundation for future math. Polynomials. Future math lies in a lot of these sections that I'm doing. Put your number over 30, divide 30 into the back of the decimal, and move your decimal 2 places to the right and get your percent. And hopefully your score is great. And getting back to my little sheet here, click on the like button if you like the video. And if you're not a subscriber, click on the subscribe button to join my YouTube channel and if you do my viewings. And click the notification bell because there are many videos on Algebra 2 coming and trig and everything else. And write a comment on my video if you wish, and visit my math website, mathfullyexplained.com. And you have 3 sections. Section on me talks about my degrees and teaching experience. The section on video tells you about the teaching strategies you're going to use to help you learn your math. The section on content has the topics and the number of videos on each topic. The black font is what's online right now, and the red font is what I'll be putting there in the near future. Many more videos to come. I've only just started developing this channel. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.